go with Sam.
Sam, yeah, that's a good choice. Audrey, how about you?
That's a good question. Probably Sam as well. Yeah.
Meredith?
Dr. Garrison.
Yeah, you did have to do something pretty hard.
Yeah, he had to let go of his daughter in the end. Like, he was the reason that she stopped.
Yeah, that's true. I gave it to Sam as well. I think that Sam earned it this week. He put all the fairy tale stuff together and knew about all of the fairy tales, which was useful. And then he also talked to Dr. Garrison through believing in the supernatural and convinced him that he should let his daughter die, which is a hard to convince someone.
Yeah.
That's
no
a tough
kidding.
sell.
Especially because he's been hanging on to her for this long. Like, she was poisoned when she was 8. She's got the body of an adult now.
Yeah. Sam also, like, went against Dean and, like, tracked down this Crossroad Demon, and, like, it didn't really amount to very much, but, like, he did go against Dean and, like, kill this Crossroad Demon, and, like, one less demon in the world is a good thing, I guess. Bechdel test. Do we have 2 named women in this episode?
How many real names did you get?
Well, we have Callie.
Julie, even though Julie wasn't present.
They didn't name the witch, though, did they?
They didn't name the witch. I just wanna, they gave the hiking, like, the woman a last name, but I don't remember if she had a first name, and I just wanna check.
Like, did the guy use it when we were arguing?
I kind of thought maybe he did. His name was Ken, and her name was...
Barbie.
Or did they go the Sandman route?
Oh, I loved that so much.
Well, her name was Walters, so if her name's Barbie, it's probably Barbara, and then her name's Barbara Walters.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
I don't think they talked to each other, did they? Or
no, they would have. Anyways, but she is not even really credited on IMDb.
Oh, no. Delightful.
So yeah, we're gonna say it's a fail either way.
Yeah.
Oh, her name's Julie as well.
it's
Julie Watson.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's just not a Bechdel test pass.
No.
Hang on 1 second.
Always like seeing female villains with death.
This week's case of the week was kind of a ghost, kind of fairy tales, specifically the Grimm's fairy tales. I know Meredith has stuff for this, so I'm just gonna pass the mic.
Indeed, I do. This mythology section is a little special because there's very little mythology in it, and we thought I would discuss the Brothers Grimm and their work. I like the Brothers Grimm because they were able to turn being obsessed with fairy tales into a career, something I'm still working on. Let's see. Okay, so Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were German authors and cultural historians who published their works during the first half of the 19th century. They're known for their collection of fairy tales. Fun fact, their mom was named Dorothea, which is only relevant because it reminded me of the Taylor Swift song.
I love that you made that reference so much, Meredith.
You're welcome. So the Grimms didn't actually write fairy tales. They were responsible for collecting old German folk tales during a 19th century resurgence of Celtic and Germanic culture during the Romantic era. People like these guys have a huge hand in preserving these cultures and their stories. Previously, during the Middle Ages, and especially during the early modern era and afterwards, there was a lot more emphasis placed on classical Greek and Roman culture. And I, for one, am really glad people like the Grimm brothers existed because I can't live in a world where all the guys compare themselves to Achilles when they're being dramatic. It's salty on that one, but that's okay. The brothers also wrote collections of Scandinavian folklore, which is pretty cool. They were also known for how dark their fairy tales were, though I should note they're not entirely to blame for that, since the folk tales themselves were already dark long before the Grimms got to them.
Yeah, they just didn't water them down the way that we went on to do.
Yeah, all they did was write them down. Also, the Grimms were fully aware of how dark stories were, since they actually released sanitized versions of them later during their careers. So you don't just have Disney to blame for that, if that's something that bothers you. Also, I just really want to clear something up about Cinderella.
Please do.
Cinderella is a very, very old story, many versions, and a lot of people assume that the gory Grimm version is the original, but it's not. The version with the glass slipper and no gore was actually published almost a full century before the Grimms were even born, by a French writer.
Wait, so did they make that one gory, like gorier than the original?
Well, it's a German version of a story that has many versions, so I'm guessing the Germans were just like, let's just add some gore. Let's do that.
So you're saying that the Disney version is kind of closer to the actual original, like the one published before the Grimm?
I'm gonna get to that. By a French writer named Charles Perrault. You might have seen that name in the credits of the Disney movie, so if you don't like the Disney movie because it's not gory, just know it's not actually based on the gory one. As far as I know, real original Cinderella was way longer. I can't remember where or when it comes from, and it had a magical resurrecting cow instead of a fairy godmother.
Oh, that
like
makes
the fairy
sense.
godmother popular, but magical cows are also high on my list of things that I enjoy.
Resurrecting cow.
See, the cow thing makes sense if you've seen Into the Woods, though.
Yeah.
Which I have, and I love it. I made my parents watch it on Thanksgiving weekend.
Nice.
The fairy tales referenced in this episode are among the Grimm's most popular, including Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White, The Frog Prince, Cinderella, and Three Little Pigs. Some of their other popular stories are Sleeping Beauty, The Gold Goose, Rapunzel, The Shoemaker and the Elves, and The Musicians of Bremen.
We should have got Shoemaker and the Elves. I love Shoemaker and the Elves.
Yeah, that one's fun.
When I was a little
That's
kid,
fun.
my grandma recorded me a cassette tape of her reading me stories, and one of them was The Shoemaker and the Elves, and I love it.
I really love The Musicians of Bremen. That's very sweet.
Yeah, that one's really good, too.
It's funny. They also published some less popular but equally entertaining stories like The Brave Little Tailor, Seven Ravens, Six Wands, The Goose Girl, and King Firstbeard, which Audrey liked.
I
I
really
knew none of those, which is interesting.
I highly recommend them.
I think the only one I'm not familiar with is the one with the ravens.
It basically has the same plot as Six Swans.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
A girl's brothers turn into birds, and she has to complete trials to free them.
Good for her for taking the step.
Yeah, it was a very, very common trope in many
Not
fairy
leaving
tales.
her brothers as birds.
Some of these stories famously remind children to stay out of the woods, like Little Red Riding Hood, or, like Hansel and Gretel, they reflect a past reality wherein parents who couldn't feed their children might actually leave them in the woods to die.
Good times to be a child.
And that's why you should resist going into the woods, because you'll be left there to die.
Yes, exactly. Or just bring some rocks, not breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are the plan that failed.
Well, that's good to know for next time I go in the woods.
Yes, they're known for the breadcrumbs, but birds ate those in the actual story. The plan that worked were bringing some rocks.
Well, I mean, not to call back to another Supernatural episode, but I'm going to call back to another Supernatural episode. Dean already pulled a Hansel and Gretel in season 1. In
When was
Wendigo.
that?
In episode 2.
Oh, yeah. Birds are less likely to eat M&Ms than they are to eat breadcrumbs.
That is true. Peanut M&Ms are less appealing to birds.
I
What the
had
hell is
forgotten
that?
about that, but that's such a Dean thing to do.
It really is.
So, an analysis of these fairy tales shows traces of older Germanic mythology, sometimes including later versions of gods or creatures that were more popular centuries earlier, which would have eventually been lost to us had the Grimms not put so much care and effort into preserving them. So, in conclusion, we owe the Brothers Grimm so much, and the history of fairy tales is always more complicated than it looks.
I love fairy tales, but I have nothing to add, really. I'm a big fan of the version of Cinderella where they cut off pieces of their feet.
The Grimm Cinderella.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. So,
I mean, I can kind of see that, like how far the step family was willing to go
yeah.
to get the prince, and even at the cost of self-mutilation.
Oh yeah, I like both the versions that I've read, but for different reasons, I guess.
Oh yeah, I'd be interested to read the version with the cow.
Is it a Grimm's thing or an Into the Woods thing where the stepsisters then get their eyes pecked out by birds? Because I'm also a fan of that.
I think that's a Grimm thing.
I do think that's a Grimm
It's
thing.
so
Yeah.
entertaining in Into the Woods.
So yeah, because it's also a lot of these evil characters in the fairy tales will always get punished for their actions. So the birds just pulling a Deus Ex Machina and coming out of the sky.
You see, if you're gonna learn one thing from this episode of the podcast, it's that the Into the Woods people really did their research.
Oh yes, on the Grimm versions.
Well, even with the resurrecting cow.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting because the cow was supposed to be from Jack Beanstalk, but I guess I
It
wonder
is
if
a
that was
cow
on
that
purpose.
resurrects. Yeah. Our next segment is Highlight and Lowlight, and we're going to start with Meredith.
Lowlight was the big bad wolf waking up because I feel so bad for this guy, and highlight was just fairy tales in general because I like fairy tales.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Nick, how about you?
It's the highlight of Sam with a demon and lowlight Callie being put to rest.
Okay, cool. Audrey, how about you?
Highlight was what Meredith said with all the fairy tales. I really just do enjoy fairy tales, and I enjoyed their presence and being able to pick out which was which. The lowlight was, everyone being controlled by Callie. I know she was, it might have not been precisely her fault either. As a little girl and a ghost. Yeah, she's a little girl and she's a ghost. She probably is not fully aware of what's happening to her in that. So I don't think it's precisely her fault that she was controlling everyone.
Yeah.
So really the suckiest.
Ghost just kind of
really
crazy too. Like that's just kind of like a ghost.
Yeah, but really that would make the suckiest person the stepmother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah. Something was definitely up with Julie. My highlight is also Sam's confrontation with the Crossroad Demon, and my low light is pretty much everything else. But if I have to pick a specific thing, it's genies and gay is a slur.
Aw, it sucks.
Yeah, that was terrible.
He's a product of his time, but it's not good. It's still not good.
Yeah.
It's an explanation, not an excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call CPS. Times when adults should be calling CPS. Hopefully someone called CPS for Little Red Riding Hood girl, because
Yeah.
it's not having a party in.
Maybe Dr. Garrison can adopt her.
That's kind of what I was thinking in an ideal world in the Disney version of the fairy tales.
It'd be cute, but I don't think it's gonna happen that way. She's probably gonna be
decided it
stuck in
will.
the foster system.
Also, apparently somebody should have called CPS on Julie Garrison, who fed her child bleach.
No kidding.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, what might have led up to that? Like, were there...
I do think that if she did if they stayed married that whole time and like worried over her, I do think it was probably Munchausen by proxy.
That is a likely explanation.
Which is what
But,
Dean and Sam,
who's to
Dean
say?
was the first one to suggest Munchausen by proxy, and Sam's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Honestly, it does.
Yeah, it does fit. It's super duper rare, but like for her to like sit by her like this child's bedside like for all these years, like is the kind of attention that Munchausen by proxy is looking for.
Oh yeah. Now I'm just thinking of Gypsy Rose.
Oh, me too. I forgot her name, but I was like, oh yeah, it's like that girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is textbook Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah, my true crime brain is very familiar with the story of Gypsy Rose. Firing squad, people who did not perform their duties, whoever investigated this bleach incident, a child comes into the ER having ingested bleach, and we just assume that's an accident. That's bad. Everything.
Yeah, like on every true crime thing I've ever watched, or even the crime procedural dramas, like they would have looked into a family angle. They would have looked to see if there was abuse there.
Just checked. They're like, we still don't know how Callie got into the bleach all these years later. I'm like, did someone investigate?
I think Dr. Garrison gets a pass because, like, that's his daughter and his wife. And he's not going to be in a right state of mind.
That horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but like you'd think the police. Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, I think that the nurse who tells them that Callie's in this hospital, I don't think she was allowed to tell them that.
No, that's a violation of patient privacy.
And I definitely don't think she was allowed to be like, oh yeah, that's Dr. Garrison's kid.
And Dr. Garrison's like, excuse me? Giving out my information?
I think that was a HIPAA violation. Like, even if they are pretending to be the FBI, I'm pretty sure she's not allowed to tell them. Like, I think as like an FBI investigator, here's what I'm not super clear, because obviously this is Canada, we have different rules, and I'm not super familiar on what the rules are. But in my brain, I think they can be like, do you have anyone matching this description? And she's like, no, there's no kids that are 8. Like, they went in and asked about a kid about 8 years old, and she was like, no, there's no kids like that. And then she's like, mostly it's old people, and then this one other person. And I don't think she's allowed to specify it. She gives the patient's name and her condition and says who they're related to. That's a lot of personal information.
A lot of personal information that the FBI didn't ask for.
Specific. Exactly. It's not related to the question that they were asking as FBI agents. So I think that
somebody's
was
gonna get fired.
HIPAA violation. I think she should definitely be fired. Mental health check. I'm not a psychologist. This segment is based purely on my own opinions. Big reminder that if you're struggling with anything at all, please reach out for help. This week, I don't know. I just don't know. Gene wants to die.
Shocker.
That's not new he's been like this in season 2. This is just how he is now. Sam is struggling with that concept, but Sam's not like struggling with the concept in like a just in denial way. He's struggling with it in a I'm gonna do something that might get me killed also way. Like Sam has been explicitly told that if they try and get out of this deal, Sam will just drop dead. And he still goes to do this demon thing, which is a reckless disregard for Sam's own life, bordering on suicidal.
I'm a Winchester. I can fight for the roles.
It really is the Winchester way.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about this episode. I just don't want to be here.
We're so much fun to hang out with.
Yes, I'm happy to be here with you. I don't want to be here in this episode anymore.
Oh dear.
Fair enough.
Soul transaction. Sam tried to, but I mean, not even. Like, his soul was never on the table. He tried to reverse Jean's soul transaction, but he wasn't successful. So I guess technically no soul transaction occurred in this episode. And Sam did not have a traumatic brain injury. He didn't even come close. He didn't even really get in a fight this episode. Like, Jean was in a big fight with Big Bad Wolf, and Sam was, like, not.
Sam was using his brain for other things.
I'm just gonna let you do that. I don't feel like it this episode.
Jean divided up the jobs, so that really is Jean's fault.